Alright, what up everybody in YouTube world? Here's another video by a boy Eefy's Voice with another video. It is 1:34 p.m. on this. Today is Friday, July 13th, the year 2018, and it is 1:34 p.m. exactly. Alright, here goes the video. The title of this video is gonna be called Africans versus African Americans. Africans versus African Americans. I don't know if African Americans like being called African American. Maybe they want to be called Black Americans. So maybe this video is going to be called Africans versus Black Americans. Either or, I don't know. I may say African Americans. I may say Black Americans in the title of the video. So I don't know. All right. Africans versus African Americans or Black Americans. What is the rift? Me being someone who's half African American, Black American, and someone who's half African, Nigerian. I don't know. What is the rift? What is the rift? What is the rift? Um, People in America, Black Americans, African Americans, got to realize that Africans have supported you throughout just do so. If you go to Africa at any time, if you ever went to Africa, if you ever go to Africa, you would know that the Africans support African Americans or Black Americans. They support y'all. I mean, Africa's not perfect. You're gonna find some people that don't like you or something like that, but they, for the most part, support your struggles and everything. But Africans versus African Americans or Black Americans, what is the riff? What is the beef? What is I didn't make a video on it all these years. I seen it on online and stuff like that. Look, I was born in Nigeria. I was born in Nigeria. My mother is Black American or African American. She's from Brooklyn, New York. But my father is Nigerian. Rest in peace. He passed away in 2012. But my father was Nigerian, But my father came to America in the late 60s and met my mother, and they married. They had one child in America, and then they went to visit where my father's from for about 6 or 7 years, something like that. And they had my other brother and me, the youngest child, in Nigeria. And then after a year, me being in Nigeria, we came back to America, and we came back to New York, where my mother was from. But I'm an American citizen. All my brothers are American citizens, and we've been here ever since. So I'm an American citizen. My mother's African American or Black American. My father she's from New York. My father was Nigerian. So I'm half Nigerian, half Black American, African American. So I'm good. I'm an American citizen. That's my story. But what is the rift between African Americans or Black Americans and Africans? Is there a rift? Me being half Nigerian, and half Black American, African American, I do realize that some African Americans or Black Americans don't like Africans, people from Africa, or foreign Black people in general. They have a general contempt for people who are not just solely African American who've been here for 200 years in America. If you're not from America, if you're not in the mainland America and in the United States of America for the past 200 years, if you're a Black American or African American, you may have a problem with somebody that's from another country that's Black. So they think some people in other countries don't like them, don't people in Haiti don't hate African Americans. People in Jamaica don't hate African Americans or Black Americans. People in Trinidad don't hate Black Americans or African Americans. People in Africa don't hate Black Americans or African Americans. They may. I'm not saying everybody gotta. Don't think that everybody gotta like you and just sweat you all the time. It's not like that. But for the most part, we think fondly of you, and we know your struggles, and we know you're cool. We feel you're cool. They feel you're cool. But for the most part, if you're African American or Black American, you probably have some sort of problem in some form of fashion with foreign Black people. But I'm talking about Africans right now. You may have a problem with Black people from other countries because you feel probably that they don't like you or respect you as an African American or Black American. But I'm talking about Africans, so Africans versus African Americans or Black Americans. What is the rift? Do you think Africans don't like you, don't treat you well? Africa is a big continent with different cultures and different people. There's not just Africa. There's Ghana, there's Senegal, there's South Africa, there's Congo, there's Nigeria, there's Chad, there's Mali, there's different there's different countries in Africa. Africa's a big country with different cultures. So when you say Africa, it's a big country, but it's Africa, but it's a big country with a lot of different countries. It's a big continent with a lot of different countries. So Africa likes America. I'm not saying they all like you. Some people may have a problem with you too, but for the most part, they're black people too. And coming from someone who's half Nigerian and half Black American, African American, I realize that some African Americans have a problem and just don't think fondly of people of Africans in some form of fashion, and that's what's causing the rift because they're picking up on it. They have liked you and respected you for years, and for years you have been putting down Africans or people from Africa, and what some people from Africa are realizing now is that some Black Americans may not like them, may not respect them, and may not like them. We have liked y'all for years. They have. I'm half, but some of them may have liked you for years, and they're starting to get the gist that you may not respect them, and that's what it's coming on to. Um, some Black Americans, African Americans think other people think lowly of them. They think this or that. Listen, nobody's thinking lowly about African Americans or Black Americans. We think highly of you, and you should know that by now. So get it right, get it together. What is the rift? People thinking you're talking about them, you're dissing them, that you think stuff. I don't know. From my experience, I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. I didn't know any other Nigerian people, half Nigerian people at least, and that was in my area. I guess they were here, or African people in general. I didn't see too many African people in my area. I was the only person who was half Nigerian, half American in my area. There was some Caribbean people, some black, but mostly Black Americans where I grew up in Brooklyn. But for the most part, I can say that some African Americans do not like black people from Africa. They just have no respect for y'all. They just don't like y'all, have no respect for y'all in some aspects. They just don't respect y'all. They just think you're stupid and stuff like that. And it's an ignorant mind. Not ignorant, but they just don't respect y'all. They just think they don't like y'all. They just think you're not cool. So it's changed over time, but that's what people have thought. I'm just being honest with you. But and that's why some African people are not thinking fondly of Black Americans. They don't think unfondly of you. That's why they react. They feel this the way they feel because they got that lesson from y'all over time. But for the most part, Africans, people from the continent of Africa, like African Americans or Black Americans, they know you're cool and stuff like that. They black people too. They may not be in America. Tell Black Americans, America is not the only land that black people live. They live in Africa. They live in the Caribbean. Some of them live in Europe. Some of them live in Brazil. A lot of them live in Brazil, South America. So just don't think that every form of black identity comes from America. There's other places. Africa has almost like 900 million, a billion people almost. So there's a lot of black people in Africa. So the only place where black identity comes from is not only America. They come from other countries and other places too. So there's black people around the world. So just realize that black people come from other areas. They come from America. They come from Africa. They come from the Caribbean, South America. Some of them live in Europe, and they all may not think like you. They may think a little differently. But we should and can relate with each other because underneath it all, we're all black. We're all black people of African descent in some form of fashion, and that's where our relation really is. We're all black people of African descent, and that's where our relation is. I'm not saying all Africans like African Americans, but I can say that we don't like African people don't look down on African Americans in that form of fashion. They're not sitting around in Africa going, "Oh, look at African Americans, they're idiots." They don't do that. They may have a problem with the way you treated them over the years, but they don't really talk down on you or have a problem with you in that form of fashion. But they may have a feeling about you now since y'all may not have liked them in some form of fashion over the years. So that's just the way they feel now. Y'all didn't like them, so they get it now. But what is the rift? African Americans versus Africans, or Black Americans or African Americans versus Africans? Is there a problem with each other? What is the issue? What do y'all African Americans tend to think people hate them a lot? I mean, n- people don't hate you. People don't. Everybody hates people sometimes, but people think coolly of you. But stop thinking people don't have such a problem with you to the point where they just hate you and just don't like you. They like you. They like you the same way they like other Africans or Caribbeans or South America or whatever. But just realize they have no serious problem with you. They're gonna like you the way they like other people. They're not gonna sweat you and just idolize you, but they like you too. But just stop the riff. Let them get along. Let people see alike. Let people think alike. I mean, African Americans are a cool culture. They cool. They need to be respected. They set the. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't. They wouldn't be allowed. They wouldn't have allowed black people from other countries to come to this country. They set the trend. They let the world know what the world felt to us. They showed us what we are to the world. They set they built so much in this country. They're great people. They set the trends. They set the standard for a lot of things in black culture. We all know that. So but other people have set trends and standards too in their own way in other countries and other places also. But we know your contributions to society and to black civilization and culture. So that is known. But just realize, get along. We're all black underneath it all. We're all black people of African descent underneath it all. And we should learn to respect each other and tolerate each other despite our differences. Everybody got differences. The culture in Africa is different from the culture in America. The culture in the Caribbean is different from the culture in America or Africa. The culture is different. We act different. We have different circumstances. Get along, tolerate people, and learn to understand the differences that we have amongst each other so we won't play each other and just look stupid to people. All right? So, Africans versus African Americans or Black Americans, what is the riff? What is the problem? What is the issue? Why do people don't get along? Get along, people. Get along. African Americans, stop thinking, I mean, just get along. You don't need to sweat each other or stuff like that or just think stupidly of each other. Just learn to tolerate each other so you can understand the differences in your culture. Hard to believe. Most Africans like living in Africa. Most Africans don't want to come to America. Some do, but most of them like living in Africa. They got their lifestyle, they got everything, and a lot of Americans like America. But just tolerate each other. Learn to listen and respect each other, and tolerate each other and respect each other, and that's how you generally can get along. The people not like each other, do this, that. Stop it. Stop dissing each other, putting each other down. If you talk to an African American some way, you could talk to an African the same way too. Don't be too offended by the way Americans talk to you Africans because they talk to you the way they talk to other African Americans. So and vice versa. So just realize that. Respect each other, treat each other well, and tolerate each other. Respect and tolerance is the name of the game, and that's it. So that's what this video is about. Black Africans versus Black Americans or African Americans. What is the riff? What is the issue? What is the problem? Wake up, tolerate and respect each other. We're all black people of African descent. We're all black people of African descent underneath it all. Peace out. That's what this video is about. Africans versus Black Americans or African Americans. Peace.